We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin just received from one of our naval units at sea. A large object traveling at supersonic speed is headed over the North Atlantic toward the east coast of the United States.
This is Guy Trussell and you are listening to Hot Wampa.
Ciao, this is Carmela
and Paola from Rome.
You are listening to Hot Wampa.
From the Shire to your earpieces.
Hot Wampa. All you need to know sci-fi.
Hey guys, Amber here and you're listening to Hot Wampa.
Hello Wampers, Stephen Waterhouse here. Love the show.
Hello from science fiction author Lancer Kind. Tune your smart device to retransmit Hot Wampa for some truly deep commentary on science fiction cinema.
Hi, my name is Mihaela Jembei. I'm from Moldova and you're listening to Hot Wampa.
Attention! No Ewoks were harmed while making this episode of Hot Wampa. Oops.
What number is this? Is this 47?
47, yeah.
Oh, God, I lose track. It's so hot today, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Roasting. I'm in my part of the Wampa cave here. I'm completely blacked out just to try and keep the sun from coming through the windows. Roasting today. Anyway, this is Hot Wampa episode 47. We don't have a lot for housekeeping, do we?
Not really, no. There's been not much social interaction. Maybe that's down to my part. Maybe I should be sort of pushing people a bit more, a little prod. And on Twitter, you know, I've been sort of putting it, obviously promoting our episodes. Yeah, we're having a lot of feedback, really.
Not at the moment. We're still picking up listeners and sort of likes and follows and things. So we assume that people are still sort of tracking us down and coming to us. So I haven't checked the feed figures for a week or two, so I don't know how they're doing at the moment. Really, I think just, you know, emphasise, keep sharing us about, reviews on wherever you listen to us, that kind of thing. It all helps us to reach a greater audience. We're hitting a bit of a brick wall for advertising strategies at the moment. It's one of them things, you can't give something away when it's free.
No, it's true. I mean, we invested a bit of money in Facebook and different things like that at the start of the year, didn't we? And I'm a bit sceptical really about using their facilities. So I've been sticking hot wampa stickers on toilets and things like that around Europe. So.
I think
you never know.
I think, to be honest, I think that might be the way ahead. I don't know so much about in toilets, but sort of physical advertising and promotion as much as possible. I mean, obviously asking our listeners to review us whenever they can and share and comment on episodes, it all helps us because it flags us, it makes us show up. But I think the thing with the advertising thing on Facebook, it then turns up in news feeds and I don't know, it's not necessarily a committal on the person that sees the advert. I think there's so much fluff on the Facebook news feed, sponsored this, sponsored that. I think people just kind of blank out to it. It's like, you know, we don't watch TV adverts anymore because we just fast forward through them on the old Sky Plus box. And I think it's a bit like that. I think people just scroll past it and don't take that moment to stop and look and see that it's a free podcast and, you know, you've got nothing to lose by checking it out.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Dave. The Corner House pub on Newmarket Road in Cambridge, they've been really good. I know they're listeners, and you know, we've got a couple of stickers around their pub, and it's quite interesting because one semi-drunken lunchtime, I put one of the Hot Wampa stickers up on the toilet system where there's quite a few like rock bands because they have a lot of live music. And then when I came in like this week, I noticed there's a couple of podcast stickers up on the toilet. so not our podcast, another one. So
we might not be hitting the big time, but we're certainly setting trends.
Well, we're starting an interesting chain of events, I guess, in the toilet.
As long as we're flush with success and on a roll from it, I don't mind too much. Yeah, that'd be a bit of a downer, wouldn't it? If those other podcasts then go on to do well as a result of their cistern advertising, and then we get nothing out of it.
Yeah, and the rest are probably bog standard.
Yeah. I think that they should give us a shout if they get successful out of that for starting the trends. Oh, well, if we've not got much more in housekeeping, I guess we might as well get straight on with Star Wars news, because we've got a lot to go into this episode, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
It's going to be a bit of a creepy B-movie feeling episode. A lot of theremin. Those of you that don't know what a theremin is, it was kind of an electronic instrument which was used heavily around the time of the 50s and the early 60s and the old B-movies and the old sort of hammer horror films and what have you of the time. It gave that sort of eerie, sort of otherworldly sort of sound. Actually, I'll give you a sample of a theremin. I've got a theremin sound clip here. So that's a theremin, so we've at least educated on something. Star Wars news.
Yeah, do you want to start, Dave, or do you want me to go into one?
I've got a couple of quite big ones, so if I kick us off first.
Mm-hmm.
This one's from the express.co.uk dated Saturday, May the 27th via their correspondent Sean Kitchener. Star Wars The Last Jedi is not Luke Skywalker. Rian Johnson just dropped a huge hint. I should actually say that, spoiler alert, perhaps a bit too late, but we do talk about things candidly and openly on this podcast, so if you don't want to be spoiled, you might want to fast forward to whenever we start talking about the Daily Earth Stood Still or local news or whatever you're here for. Anyway, Star Wars The Last Jedi's title has caused a lot of speculation. Who exactly does it refer to? As part of a new interview with Vanity Fair, director Rian Johnson has faced questions on its meaning, and he may have dropped a couple of telling clues. Firstly, he debunked claims that it's in the plural, after overseas translations appeared to make it so. That's interesting. I mean, I only interpreted it as The Last Jedi as meaning The Last Jedi singular personally, even though I know the plural for Jedi is Jedi.
Yeah.
So I never really thought it was meant in the plural sense anyway. Same with Return of the Jedi, I thought it meant a singular individual. Rian Johnson went on to say, see, that's a funny thing. I heard that in the foreign translations for the title, they made it plural. In my head, it's singular. It means sense with the story to me, that it's singular. So what he's thinking ties in with the film's theme here. Pressed on who it is, he unexpectedly said that he wasn't expecting people to question who specifically it refers to. That's a little naive. I mean, I think we all sort of, we extrapolate and dig for the smallest clues out of these things, I think.
Well, Star Wars fans are detectives, aren't they? They want to know every detail, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a whole world grows. That's the problem with the internet. You can go onto any sort of site, YouTube or something, where there's theory videos and the amount of trolling and the amount of arguments there about it. I'm sure some people just put it out there just to sort of drum up the conversation. But he did address the most obvious person, Luke Skywalker, played by Mark Hamill. One would think, let's say this, that at the end of episode 7, it refers to Luke because of the notion that this religion has died out and that he is the last of them. Now, when the interviewer picked up on his use of the words, one would think he added, one would think. So can we take that as a hint that it's not the obvious person, or is Ryan hinting that in fact it is? Again, it's open to interpretation, but it does sound to me like he's saying one would think it's questioning.
Yeah.
You know, like somebody's made a statement that would be generically accepted, and then somebody else is questioning that statement by saying, yes, I understand it would be the accepted statement, but is it?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I mean, obviously, he's trying to be a bit cloak and dagger. I guess he's the director. He's probably been warned by, Lucasfilm, etc., to be careful what you say in these interviews. So,
yeah.
Interesting what you said, Dave, about Return of the Jedi. Because, I just assumed it would be Luke Skywalker then. I can remember.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, now we know that the Jedi haven't exactly made a comeback, have they, after Episode 6? So.
Well, they attempted to. I mean, Yoda summed it up to me, when I've gone the last of the Jedi, will you be? And, am I a Jedi yet? No, you must confront Vader. Only then will you be a Jedi. He confronts Vader. So, I mean, I interpret it directly that Luke is the last of the Jedi. Anyway, going on to what he said, it was feared that The Last Jedi had landed in the hands of hackers when it was reported that an upcoming Disney movie was facing threats of an online leak. But now it seems that that's simply a hoax. Disney boss Bob Iger has told Yahoo Finance, to our knowledge, we were not hacked. We had a threat of a hack of a movie being stolen. We decided to take it seriously but not react in the manner in which the person who was threatening us had required. He added, we don't believe that it was real and that nothing has happened. I think that's probably true. I think Disney Lucasfilm were pretty watertight.
Yeah.
Probably more so than Lego. So I know we've got a discussion to have on that at some point in Star Wars news today. There you go. It's you can't really definitively extrapolate from that, but my interpretation of it is that Rian Johnson is saying that it is about the Last of the Jedi, but that the Last of the Jedi isn't necessarily Luke.
Yeah, I think he wants to keep people guessing and keep it open as possible, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's vague, and I guess it kind of, it's bait. It keeps us speculating and keeps people talking about it in the run-up to the film. Keeps that hype there, I suppose. People want to watch it just to find out what it's all about.
Yeah, and we've seen some good trailers so far, haven't we? So, and in that last one, Luke seemed a bit despondent, and he sort of basically said the Jedi are over, didn't he?
Yeah, perhaps he's a bit like this podcast. He can't get enough followers out there.
Yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah.
Mind you, where he's based himself, it makes it harder. You'd have to be pretty devout to get there, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we got that one. What have you got for another one, mate?
Well, this is a potential spoiler, and it's based, as you said, on Lego.
Yeah.
So this is the first merchandise released in the build-up to the Last Jedi. This is from the NME, musical newspaper, getting on the Star Wars bandwagon. But a new Lego set has revealed some potential plot details for Star Wars The Last Jedi and shed some light on the mysterious antagonist, Supreme Leader Snoke. Snoke made his first appearance back in 2015's The Force Awakens and appeared as a massive hologram figure with pale skin and a deformed face. Little was revealed about Snoke's involvement with the Jedi and why Kylo Ren became his apprentice. However, the packaging of the new Last Jedi Lego sets were posted to Reddit and show Supreme Leader Snoke in the form he'll appear in the coming movie, a form that doesn't resemble his Force Awakens theory. The Lego depicts Snoke as a regular-sized humanoid figure, wearing casual robes. This means that Snoke isn't, as many hoped, a ginormous alien Sith. What's also interesting is that Supreme Leader has healthier coloured skin. The fact that the leader is more human than the Force Awakens might confirm the Darth Plagueis theory that many fans have. This is written like Yoda, this thing. So
many fans have.
Many friends have. Yeah, and there is a picture. I'll post it on our Facebook. But it just looks like he's in a sort of yellow pajamas, really. So he doesn't look like the big intimidating figure as Andy Serkis portrayed in The Force Awakens.
No, that hologram is small man, big car syndrome. Yeah, many fans have. I think in this heat I could do with a bit of many fans have, to be honest with you, if it weren't for the background noise. I have seen these images you're talking about. I interestingly saw them on Imgur, and I was directed there from a link someone had put on Facebook. I mean, some of them were there. Some of them had been deleted and taken down. So it seems to me like there's been a half effort, as it were, to try and shut the gate after the horse has bolted, and now they're letting it go because it's all over the place. I think the image of Snoke is off the upcoming First Order Star Destroyer set, which is obviously going to be one of the bigger sets coming. And that set also includes an First Order, I nearly said Imperial there, First Order officer, a First Order shuttle pilot, a First Order Stormtrooper sergeant, and a regular First Order Stormtrooper as minifigures.
And there's a droid as well, isn't there?
That's right, a dark BB-8 type droid, like one of the round ball droids.
Yeah, I can't see its name, but it is like four digits.
Yeah. Like you say, he is dressed in what looks like a gold robe. There's been some... I sort of had a quick whiz through a few forums this morning looking at what people were saying about it, and there's a lot of parallels getting drawn with sort of Austin Powers and Goldmember and all the smoking jackets and stuff, like just a bit like what you said.
Yeah,
so
he needs a brown dressing gown and a towel, and he looks like Hitchhiker's Guide.
It looks like a 70s Playboy with his Laramie gear on or something like that to me. There's that one. There's also one, can you remember in the Last Jedi trailer, there was those ships that the X-Wings and TIEs were darting in and out amongst that were bigger than them, that looked a bit like the old Nebulon medical frigate from Return of the Jedi and The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
They're actually a much smaller ship. They are a form of bomber in service of the Resistance, because they're releasing a set based on that as well. And it looks like it has a crew of 3 with a bombardier, I guess a bomb aimer, a pilot and a gunner. And on the actual Lego set, all these crew are wearing what looks like typical sort of X-Wing flight gear.
Yeah.
And all the minifigures are named characters. So I'm figuring that one of these ships must play some sort of pivotal role in the film, because we see a fleet of those ships in the trailer. That's quite prominent. There's another set that's been leaked as well, and I can't think what it is off the top of my head.
Is it those sand speeders that we see going like through the desert with the red dust coming up?
No, what else? Oh yeah, that Resistance bomber that I just mentioned. It's also got a minifigure with it of Laura Dern's character in The Last Jedi, the Resistance Admiral that she plays. What's the other set? Oh, I can't think. AT-AT. First Order AT-AT.
Right.
Or what looks very much like an AT-AT, or a variation on an AT-AT. I haven't really had a good look at that to see what minifigures are actually in that set. So, yeah, I mean, the thing with Lego, they've done this before. I mean, there was sort of early stuff come out on Rogue One. I believe originally in Rogue One, the character of Jyn Erso was given a rebel rank of a sergeant, and they called the figure they released, Lego's figure of Jyn Erso, Sergeant Jyn Erso.
Right.
So they do tend to jump the gun. I mean, I think they get stuff possibly a little early from Disney to work with, because they released a set based on the First Order Snowspeeder, and that's not really in The Force Awakens, other than in the deleted scenes when you go into the Blu-ray. Mm-hmm. It was kind of omitted to a degree from the film. So Lego do tend to work on this stuff and get it out, work out the packaging and design the sets and everything quite early on and quite quickly. I guess they've got to. I mean, they've got a lot of work to do on it. But obviously there's stuff that's getting out, whether it's officially through Lego or whether someone's just taking happy snaps and putting them out there. I'm not too sure.
Well, also, I've got several friends who work at a printing press, and the packaging has to be done, before the toys are produced as well. So if you're on a print screen and you see Star Wars, you're going to get a look at it quite early. So
yeah, I mean, it's out there. I saw an interview once, a documentary once about Lego's headquarters in Billund in Denmark, where they have like it's just like the Lego Skunk Works. It's kind of like where they design all their sets and all their R&D goes on.
Yeah.
And they let the film crew walk around and film a degree of it. And they were walking through this courtyard and this room. I think at the time they were doing Marvel superhero stuff all in this room. And they were outside. And as they walked past this room, like these mechanized stainless steel shutters went across all of the windows as they walked past.
Wow.
And then when they walked on to a certain distance, they all opened up again. So they've actually got physical means to try and stop stuff from getting out there before they officially release it.
Well, you can imagine there'll be some sort of, not punishment, but I'm sure Lucasfilm will be in contact with Lego, won't they, to have a go at them for releasing it early.
Well, I don't know whether it's because so little Lego is actually manufactured in Denmark. I mean, they have subcontractors now that manufacture a lot of their stuff in China and Mexico and other places in the New World, and it makes you wonder if they can only kind of keep the lid on the leaks locally, but they can't keep the lids on what happens in a factory in Shanghai or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're a global enterprise, and I think as further they spread the wings, the more likely stuff like this is going to come out because there's more people in that chain.
Well, a huge amount of money, obviously, Lego generates. I mean, you've collected quite a few. Are you tempted to get anything sort of from these new sets that are being released?
I have done, but it depends on the prices. I still collect the odd bits and pieces, but I tend to wait until events like, when Black Friday comes around and stuff like that, or when they're about to release a load of new sets and then they discount old sets.
Yeah.
Because I think somebody once worked out that when it's first released, Lego, its equivalent weight is equivalent to its value in gold. It is so damned expensive. So if there's something I've got my eye on and I like the look on as a bit of a showpiece, I'll wait till a point where it's sort of they knock 20-30% off it to clear it, or on a sales event before I buy it.
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive, isn't it? I mean, the only Lego I have is Minecraft.
Oh, yeah.
My girlfriend likes to play Minecraft, so I've got her a set, and she kept it on the unit for a couple of days and then took it apart again. So
it's funny. I mean, as you know, I have the original Lego Millennium Falcon, and that was the first one they released back in 1998. So it's nearly 20 years old now. Still got all the package. I mean, obviously, I've opened the box, built it up, and it sits there on my shelf. I mean, I'm not going to sit something like that in a box because it's too tempting. When I brought that back in 1998, it cost me £70 from Zaski's.
Yeah.
Which seems expensive at the time. Well, I was having a look online the other day for sets like that have been opened and built up, but all the same still have all the pieces, still have the box, still have the instructions like I do. Guess what they're selling for now?
I have no idea. 100?
My one's worth £643 in its current state. That makes you realise, doesn't it, the value of the stuff to collectors. No kids buy this stuff anymore. It's all for the grown-ups.
It has to be. They're the ones that can afford it, I guess.
At those prices, yeah.
When we go back to the old toys, I mean, do you remember how much the Millennium Falcon was worth?
Well, the old one, for the old Kenner figures.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was about £50. I don't know. Maybe that was too expensive back then.
I have absolutely no idea. I mean, I know it got re-released with each film's run. They did they repackaged it and put it out there again. Yeah, I mean, that was a lot of fun. I had a lot of hours of fun with mine. I mean, mine probably got played with too much. Mm-hmm. So the actual dashboard bit inside the Falcon cockpit that you could stick Han and Chewie's legs underneath to sit them in, and that was in the... I broke the supporting pillar that held that in, so I had to basically sit both figures in there, sit that loosely on top, and then snap the canopy down on top to hold it in. And the same, because it had like a battle alert sound, they called it, didn't it?
That's right, yeah.
You stuck a couple of big old chunky batteries off the time. This is before lithium-ion, kids. Ask your parents. In the side, and you pressed, and you closed the hatch up on it, and you pressed a button, and it made this really rubbish electrical siren sound.
Where was the button?
It was actually on the hatch itself.
Okay.
Basically, it just pushed like a copper plate down on the ends of the two batteries, made up the circuit, and somewhere in there there's a simple little speaker with a simple little chip that made a very simple electronic sound, wasn't it? It wasn't anything complex. And on mine, I actually broke the latch on that hatch. The batteries went in and out because I got some batteries with it when I got it one year for Christmas. Used them up quickly, playing the old battle alert sound on there, annoying people in my household with it. The batteries went flat. I didn't have any pocket money to buy other batteries, so I took the batteries out and used that as a storage compartment for more figures. So I was opening and closing it the whole time. And in that process of the latch getting open and closed, I broke the latch, so that never held tight either. So on mine, that was held shut with a load of sellotape and packing tape stuck on the side of the Falcon. Mine really was a hunk of junk.
It must have looked distressed. The distressed look.
It did look distressed as well, because I used to play with it outside, and I used to like taking it out of it with snowy so I could sort of play with it in a sort of more authentic Hoff setting, on the side of my dad's frozen koi pond with the old Millennium Falcon out there. Had it out in the neighbour's sand pit a few times, so that got in all the sort of undercarriage joints, and that, of course, sand is quite abrasive, so it all got scratched up. And mine looked like it had been through a few battles by the time I'd sort of grown out of it.
Well, I think that's authentic, isn't it? Like a hunk of junk, or whatever it's called, a heap of junk.
Yeah, it wasn't mint. Let's put it that way. Okay, we've got this one, which is this is from the Vanity Fair photo shoot, the Last Jedi photo shoot. They've done one. They've released some quite nice photos. It's dated May the 24th via their correspondent Joanna Robinson. Star Wars The Last Jedi photos. Which secrets are revealed? Lucasfilm's Story Group creative executive Pablo Hidalgo walks us through all the details concealed in Annie Leibovitz's latest... Leibovitz, thank you. Intergalactic portfolio. Unlike most film set photo shoots, there are more than slick costumes and stunning locations on display in Vanity Fair's exclusive images from Star Wars The Last Jedi. Annie Leibovitz travelled to the rocky shores of Ireland and the closely guarded Pinewood studio set to photograph some never-before-seen characters, and confirm a rumour or two in the process. Lucasfilm has mastered the art of secret-keeping, other than LEGO Division. Remember that Rey didn't hold a lightsaber in any of the Force Awakens marketing, but is ready to pull back the curtain on some of the Last Jedi's mysteries in these exclusive photographs from the summer issue of Vanity Fair. Now, to help point out some significant details you might have missed, VanityFair.com asked Pablo Hidalgo, Lucasfilm Story Group's creative executive, and in the words of the Force Awakens director J.J. Abrams, keeper of all arcane details of Star Wars, to explain some of the portfolio's hidden depths. One of the biggest surprises waiting in the pages of Vanity Fair is the first look at Laura Dern's magenta-haired Admiral Amlin Holdo. Hair this colour is not commonly seen in Star Wars films, but Hidalgo confirms that Dern's character, a high-ranking officer in the Resistance, is human. The magenta hair, he says, has to do with her cultural background. When quizzed on whether this is the first time a human in the films has adopted such an unnatural hue, Hidalgo responded like a walking encyclopedia with a sense of humour. I know there was a platinum blonde in Jabba's palace whose hair colour was probably suspicious, but only her hairdresser knows for sure. Again, being a bit edgy, having a bit of a joke with not telling people what's going on. But as much as Hidalgo knows about every nook and cranny of the Star Wars universe, he and Lucasfilm did not reveal any extra details about Benicio del Toro's enigmatic character, not even his name. This is the Last Jedi character, most shrouded in secrecy. They have released these 2 photos. Laura Dern's character is, like it says, in a sort of magenta coloured hair dye and a magenta coloured, what looks like a formal or a sort of evening gown. Yeah. It's quite long and flowing. The magenta coloured hair, I would say it's purple. That's not uncommon in the greater Star Wars universe. There's a Mandalorian female character in Rebels, I think it's Sabine, her name is, who dyes her hair this colour. And I think the hair, when she's a graffiti artist anyway, she's quite a bright character. But I think that might be cultural in itself. So Laura Dern's characters could possibly be Mandalorian or on a world that was influenced or dominated by the Mandalorians. Benicio del Toro. Now that's interesting. He's got some quite cool looking gear on there, hasn't he?
Yeah, yes, yeah.
I mean, that wouldn't be far out of a Milan fashion shoot, would it?
I've never been to one, but yeah.
He's sitting there looking a bit smart, you know, a bit of a steampunky sort of industrial type environment behind him. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, again, they're keeping him interesting, vague, mysterious and interesting. Obviously, he's got quite a prominent, well, a significant role in the upcoming movie. We'll have to keep that open. Though not much is known about either of these new characters, it looks as though Dern's Admiral Holdo would fit right in with the high-class occupants of Canto Bight, The Last Jedi's upscale answer to the Mos Eisley Cantina. It's especially odd to see the upper echelon of the galaxy partying in The Last Jedi, considering that the capital planet of the New Republic, Hosnian Prime, was blown up by the First Order's Starkiller in The Force Awakens. Are these well-dressed patrons just fiddling while Rome burns? So they've released another picture. It looks a bit like a sort of, again, like a ball or formal evening function. And there's this variety of alien races, and they're all sort of dressed up sort of smart, I guess the Star Wars equivalent of sort of tuxes and gowns and that kind of thing. Looking at it, there's a lot of sort of influence, I think, from our own sort of television, this side of the pond, I think. It made me think of sort of scenes that you would get period scenes in a drama like Doctor Who or something like that. Yeah. Or possibly at the stretch, it wouldn't look out of place at an Adam Ant video. Stand and deliver. So what do you think? I mean, I can't recognise any of the races in this sort of group photograph at this formal event.
Yeah, I mean, I question why people would be celebrating and having a good time when I guess their galaxy's in disarray. So maybe it is held, you know, for the First Order or something like that.
I don't know. Maybe it's some sort of diplomatic function, the ambassador's reception, the old Ferrero Rocher are getting handed around these alien races. I think even though I can't recognise the vast majority of these, most of these races in this photo, one of them does look a bit like a boffin, and that's the kind of tall, hairy, sort of horse-faced guy in there. Otherwise, I can't recognise any of them. I guess they're just various dignitaries. Anyway, they go on to say, what we're going to see in The Last Jedi, Hidalgo explains, are some people who have managed to carve out a life for themselves where they can live apart from the galactic struggle. So they're probably Swiss. They found a way to live above it or beyond it. There's a class of wealthy that have helped build all sorts of loopholes in society that will always ensure that they'll survive or even thrive no matter what else is happening out there. As Johnson summed it up in our cover story, Canto Bight is a playground, basically, for rich arseholes. I believe some of these films were sort of scenes were shot in somewhere in sort of Croatia or Eastern Europe or something like that. So I'm guessing perhaps they went there for the sort of deco and the buildings of the period.
Yeah, the architecture's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah, and that could possibly be Canto Bight because there were some photographs leaked showing a lot of aliens on the set out there.
And didn't we read something about drones sort of patrolling the area, making sure that no photographers could get nearby?
Yeah, I think Lego need to employ a few drones or something.
They do.
Ed 209 walking around their workshops or something. Moving on, though that chrome-plated trooper suit is by now firmly a part of the Star Wars iconography, this portfolio is the first time Gwendolyn Christie's Captain Phasma has shown her face. I think a big part of the allure of her character was just wondering what might be underneath, Hidalgo explains, of keeping the Game of Thrones stars helmeted in the first film of the current trilogy. It was only relatively recently that we wanted to commit to the idea that there was a human under there. The Force Awakens left that question, but as we got further into Last Jedi, as well as some other stories we're thinking about with Phasma, we had to ask ourselves, alright, do we agree that there's a human under there? The definitely human Phasma is also sporting a slick new weapon which Hidalgo says doesn't have a fancy name yet, but it will, these things always do. Unlike the weapons we're used to seeing in Star Wars, lightsabers and blasters, Phasma's accessory is a retractable polearm that collapses into a smaller, easier to carry form should she ever find herself shoved down a trash compactor again. This weapon, Hidalgo says, has a strong connection to Phasma's history, which will be explored in a comic book series out in September. Her background, Hidalgo hints, is more than low-tech than many would assume. Didn't we talk about a story before when they said that she's got some form of spear?
Yeah.
So I think we were probably spot on with that when we spoke about that. It looks like she has got some sort of differing melee weapon.
And it could be like Predator 2, like that kind of spear, where it sort of elongate when you hold it.
It's some sort of functional advanced thing. I would assume so, because if you're going to take on a Jedi with this thing, it's going to be rubbish. Because with a laser blade weapon, you could have a sword as sharp as you like. One swipe of the old lightsaber and it's cut in half. Mm-hmm. In the greater expanded universe or legends or whatever you want to call it, in the fiction that was based on the fiction that's gone before, I believe there was a substance in the Star Wars universe called cortisoids or something. I can't pronounce it off the top of my head. I'm working vaguely from old books and video games. And this stuff was found to be lightsaber resistant, and various sort of bladed melee weapons or melee weapons in general, or even sort of weaves for body armor were manufactured out of this stuff because lightsabers couldn't penetrate it. So it makes you wonder if it's possibly supposed to be something like that.
Yeah, I guess so, Dave. But with the amount of Jedis and lightsabers in the galaxy, perhaps would it be useful anymore?
Well, I don't know. I mean, assuming she was something to do with the purge of Luke's Jedi Academy, perhaps. Who knows? Yeah. Or maybe it's just an ancient cultural weapon that an ancient cultural warrior would use to take on Jedi with, someone from a specific society at some point that had a run-in with the Jedi like the Mandalorians did. Who knows?
Or you could also see that Kylo Ren gets quite angry, so maybe she thought she would keep it handy with that material just in case he has a little fit.
Well, you would do. I mean, I wouldn't mess with her anyway. She looks like she can handle herself, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. Eagle-eyed Force Awakens fans may notice that Kylo Ren's battle wound has well migrated since Rey slashed his face and won their lightsaber duel. Is this some kind of advanced Sith healing method? As a matter of fact, no. It was my decision to slightly adjust it, Rian Johnson tweeted at a fan after the first glimpse of Ren's scar in the Last Jedi trailer raised some questioning. It honestly looked goofy running straight up the bridge of his nose. So they've decided that that's aesthetically, for the sake of filmmaking, his injury can be shifted.
Yeah, I disagree with that for continuity reasons.
You think you should keep that scar there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we all have scars, don't we? And we look back on them and remember certain times. And I think just for continuity of the film, you should keep it where it was.
Sort of a badge of honour, yeah, from our various misadventures. I'm with you, but if it looked a bit rubbish, and in this universe, surely they've got the plastic surgeons that could address something like that.
We're not going to take your scar away. We're just going to move it somewhere else on your face.
Yeah. We know you like it. We know you keep it, but we think it's a bit impractical where it is, so we just got to shift it if that's all right for you. Something like that. I mean, obviously, they'd have the work cut out for them fixing up Snoke's moniker there.
Well, obviously, they'll probably give him a cylinder head with a little attachment on top that he could put a hat on or something. He will be like a Lego man in this film.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why he's got the Laramie dressing gown on. Perhaps he's in and out of hospital a bit, the old private clinic.
Yeah.
Bit of collagen put in here, fleshed out there, skin graft the other, just see what they can patch up out of him. Anyway, Star Wars fans got to know and love Carrie Fisher's constant canine companion Gary during the press tour for The Force Awakens. Who can forget a dog that so easily steals the show on national television? Gary's appearances in this portfolio should come as no surprise, though you might need to look closely at General Lear's skirts before you find him. So it's a bit like Where's Wally? but it's Mark Hamill's daughter's dog, Millie, standing at the feet that might turn heads. Millie was also a presence on the Episode 8 set and even crashed a panel or two at this year's Star Wars Celebration. So Mark Hamill's dog's in there in one of these photographs. It's sort of like a black and white photograph they've released that's got Rian Johnson, Kathleen Kennedy, Mark Hamill as Luke in his robes and stuff, and Carrie Fisher as General Organa sitting down. And you can see Mark Hamill's daughter's dog, Millie, sort of around the feet, around the robes area.
Yeah.
So Star Wars actors' pets, again, gate crashing the convention, so to speak. There's, I haven't really got it here to talk about. There's the lovely photo they've released of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher together in costume as part of this photo set.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's a really nice one. And obviously it's more poignant now than it was. It's they're sort of hugging, aren't they? And it's a lovely picture.
I think it's a lovely photo. Yeah, I put it up on our Facebook this week and it's attracted a few likes. So I think it's a lovely warm photo and I think it's a nice photo to think of Carrie through. Moving on, blink and you might miss a shiny bit of bling dangling from the ceiling of the Millennium Falcon just above Chewbacca's head. The small pair of golden dice that first made a brief appearance in A New Hope and then disappeared for 38 years before popping up again on our Force Awakens cover, where you can see them swinging between the V and the A. Why do the dice come and go? Hidalgo says it's possible the production team simply forgot about them between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. When J.J. Abrams and his team looked back at footage in order to faithfully reconstruct the Falcon for The Force Awakens, the dice made their triumphant return. I never noticed some fluffy dice hanging up there in A New Hope.
Me neither, but it's straight out of Essex, and they probably have Han and Chewbacca on the front of the cockpit and the Falcon,
Yeah, Sharon on the number plate. Yeah. But the official in-universe story of the dice has been bedeviling fans for decades. 38 years, apparently. Yes, believe it or not, those little accessories have prompted numerous legends. Here's the official one, probably. The story that you would hear if you travelled to cantinas or watering holes around the Star Wars galaxy. Hidalgo says, spinning his yarn, is that those dice were involved in a game of Carillion Spike, a dice-using version of a card game called Sabacc. Rumour has it, Han won the Millennium Falcon from Lando Calrissian with those dice. Whether or not that's just bar talk, I can't say. So will those dice and that fateful gambling showdown be making an appearance in the upcoming Han Solo prequel, starring Alden Ehrenreich as Han and Donald Glover as Lando? That's in the future, Hidalgo says coyly. Ask me a movie from now.
Yeah. Good.
So, the dice are in, it would seem.
Well, let's hope so.
Yeah. Are they diced in with continuity when they make a decision like this?
Well, if the Scar can move around, I'm sure the dice can. Maybe they're won and lost.
Yeah. It's rapidly turning into The Only Way is Essex 1970s, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Dave, did you also see the cover photos from the Vanity Fair? Because I believe they had 3 different cover photos.
I believe there's 4.
Is it 4? I've got 3 up here.
Yeah, I think I might even have something about that. One of the most striking features of Skellig Michael, the real-life Irish island initially used as the location of Luke Skywalker's new home on the planet Act 2, are the medieval monks' beehive-shaped stone dwellings, visible in the final scene of The Force Awakens. As David Camp outlines in our cover story, the huts were faithfully recreated on the much more accessible Dingle Peninsula for The Last Jedi. But what do these structures mean for the Star Wars universe? Are they the remains of an original Jedi temple that Luke was reportedly seeking, or merely a local village? It turns out those huts belong to a race of non-Jedi caretaker inhabitants of Arc 2 that Rian Johnson told Camp are not Ewoks. The design of the huts was dictated by the centuries-old structures on Skellig Michael, though Hidalgo says they've been given a few modifications to look otherworldly, like a couple of dice, I guess. But much of Act 2's look is shaped by nature and our own crumbling history. Why mess with perfection? The complete portfolio, including portraits of Carrie Fisher posing with on-screen brother Mark Hamill and real-life daughter Billie Lourd, and the complete cover story by David Camp can be found online. The summer issue of Vanity Fair will be on newsstands in New York and Los Angeles on June the 1st and nationally on June the 6th. So these things are upcoming. I believe you're right. I believe I think it's 4 posters.
Yeah.
As like part of a collection series for the covers. I mean, the covers are out so much in advance. Has anyone really got to bother with the magazine? It looks like they've they've kind of released the bulk of what they're talking about.
Well, you would hope there'd be a few more inside that we didn't get to see.
I think these sort of special issues of Vanity Fair, when they're released, and people will buy them as collector's pieces, won't they?
Yeah. Similar to what Empire magazine in the UK sort of do a few like this. I'm looking at one now with Rey and Luke sort of on the island.
Yeah.
She's still got her sort of trusty staff on her back, so it looks like it's fairly early on, kind of immediately after The Force Awakens.
Well, that's still the weapon she'll be most conversant with, and we see in that sort of marketplace scene, if you, as it were, in the Force Awakens, where she deals with those two thugs after the BB-8 droid. She's pretty proficient with that thing.
Yeah.
She presents Luke with his lightsaber at the end of the Force Awakens. If she's still carrying the staff, maybe Luke's. Oh, cheers! I'll have that back then. See, as I chucked the last one away on the second Death Star, hossed it off into the corner somewhere. You heard it clang. We never did find out if he picked it up. I'm sure someone can tell us. I'm sure someone can say whether it's actually flapping around on his utility belt thing when he's dragging Vader off to the old shuttle to get off the Death Star. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I mean, obviously she undergoes some sort of training at the hand of Luke.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
His one good hand, anyway.
Yeah, well, that rusty one needs replacing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Have you got anything else on Star Wars?
Let's have a look. I've got another one about the anthology story.
Uh-huh.
So let's have a look. It's basically this week. They announced that it will be revealed in June. So it will follow Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and a young Han Solo movie.
Uh-huh.
This is also from The Enemy. The third Star Wars anthology movie is set to be picked next month as Lucasfilm begin discussions of which character will be taking the spotlight. A standalone Star Wars adventure movie is set to be released every other year, with Rogue One, a Star Wars story released in 2016, and a young Han Solo epic on course for a 2018 release. The third Star Wars anthology movie is assumed to be released in 2020. That seems a long way off, doesn't it? It's not, though. And it's been reported that the film studio are close to making a decision on which idea they'll be running with. We haven't identified the story yet, Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy told Vanity Fair. We have a couple of things right now there that we're circling, and we'll make a decision between the two pretty shortly. It's probably for 2020, and we will make a decision by June.
I mean, a lot of the speculation is for a Kenobi movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know if they need to. I think that's possibly fan dreams bringing that one up. If they're doing standalones, I don't know why they can't go back in history a long way. Instead of the universe we're familiar with, I mean, Rogue One is set between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Obviously, we're getting the Young Han Solo Chronicles, or whatever you want to call it, coming up, which is going to be set in a sort of the same, possibly a little bit earlier than Rogue One sort of time setting, but certainly sort of post Revenge of the Sith, pre A New Hope. I don't see why they couldn't make a standalone movie in either the prequels era or going back even further to something I'm a bit of a fan of, which is the Knights of the Old Republic era, because I think they could do it, and I think the quality of Disney's filmmaking, that maybe we could overlook some of the sort of similar standards of the prequel era and perhaps still get a good film out of it.
Yeah, I think you're right, and if they made a film like going back 2,000 years, then we wouldn't need to have all these sort of connections with the modern sort of tales, and just some completely clean slate. It'd be really good. One of the tutors I work with, Paul Walker, who did an interview with us when we covered The Matrix quite a while ago, he came up to me the other day talking about Star Wars, and he said, I don't know if you know it, but there's this wonderful game that I used to play, and then he popped the trailer up on YouTube, and I thought of you immediately, Dave, because I didn't play sort of Knights of the Old Republic, but he spoke very fondly of it.
Oh, it's a great game. I mean, it's got a big fan base, and Lego even released sets based on the video game Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. So yeah, I mean, it's a great period of time. It's got some great characters, Darth Revan, Darth Malak, so on. It really was sort of on. Well, there's a version of it today that's online. I don't know if it's that popular, but the first two games certainly were very popular. I mean, I used to play them quite a lot. I'm replaying one now, actually. So yeah, it's, like you say, it's pretty. They could pick a timeline, I don't know, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 3,000 years, and they've got a completely clean slate that they can write and work in, which isn't necessarily going to affect the continuity of the other stuff that we've had so far.
Yeah, that's right. And just completely out there, but semi-connected, but we don't need to see similar characters or anything like that. It could be completely new, couldn't it?
Yeah, I think we'd get, the things like the Jedi Order, etc., they're an ancient order. I think we could have enough to join the two up.
Yeah.
And yet it'd still feel like a new universe. I think Disney are very good at doing that now, is creating a world for us.
Well, we've seen with the Marvel universe how, they're in the third phase now. And it just, this multiverse of characters that have all come together, and it's so difficult to do, but they've done a fantastic job so far.
Very much so. In Paul Walker, wasn't he the maths professor guy?
That's right, yeah. He's a maths tutor at the college I work.
Oh, yeah. So he speaks with some credibility, wasn't he the guy that tried to work out the feasibility of a Matrix-type existence for us?
Yeah, and whether we were actually in a Matrix sort of environment.
Yeah, that's a bit of a headache one for a hot afternoon. I think we'll leave that alone. He's got some good insights, Paul, hasn't he?
Yeah. So I'll try to get him on the show again.
Yeah, I'm sure he's got a lot he could offer us. Perhaps next time we've got a bit of a thought-provoker topic in Showcase or a bit of a conundrum, we could bring him in perhaps again.
Well, also, he's a very experienced and popular ballroom dance tutor in Cambridge. So that always enthralled me, that this guy, maths tutor, looks very studious, but in the evenings he's dressed up to the nines, sort of spinning around ballrooms.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Sometimes we think that the most intelligent people can be often are very much quiet, quite humble people, aren't they?
Yeah.
When you think about a lot of the people that have made the big sort of thinking technological advances, some of them can be quite withdrawn. It tends to be the more flamboyant people that get these things to market and make the big success, though. But some people, some very intelligent people can be a little bit sort of all over the place like that. They can sort of diversify into these other things. Fascinating people. We'll have to bring them in at some point again.
We will. Just one side note about the next film. The Last Jedi's director Rian Johnson explained that Del Toro's character, Benicio Del Toro, plays a shady character who was referred to on set as DJ.
Yeah, he does look a bit shady in that picture.
Yeah, and he said, you'll see there's a reason why we call him DJ. So what does that mean? He added that cryptically.
Disc jockey? He's pirate radio.
He's a pirate, there we go.
He's on the pirate HoloNet, broadcasting anti-First Order films, sort of pathé, get that Hun type thing, I don't know.
Dodgy jokes.
Dodgy jokes.
Jaw.
It's Kenny Everett. Back in the old Radio Caroline days, that's who he is. I don't know. No, I think they're keeping him deliberately ambiguous. I've got a feeling he won't be black or white. He'll either be a good guy in the Han Solo vein, a bit of a scoundrel and rough around the edges, but ultimately his heart's in the right place, or he'll be a complete bad guy. Do you know what I mean? Ruthless, underworld type guy.
As long as he plays Nub Nub in the evenings, I'll be happy.
Yeah. Keep him ambiguous. I think he's an interesting character, and I think we're interested to see quite how he turns out to be in The Last Jedi. I think I've said it before. I think sometimes we overthink things too much, and characters and plots, when they're actually presented to us, tend to be a lot simpler than what we perceive or talk about.
That's right, and I think we're beginning to forget about the Force Awakens, all our speculation, and it turned out to be quite a straightforward story.
Yeah. I still feel a bit sorry for The Last Jedi, because I think Rogue One is an excellent film, and I think it's a better film than The Force Awakens, and I think The Force Awakens played a little bit too much in a playground we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Whereas with Rogue One, it was standalone. They could go a little bit left field, make it a little bit more edgy around the edges, a much more dynamic and interesting variable cast, and I think it worked very well. I think the risk they took in Rogue One plays off very well. So I think that Rian Johnson, to follow that up, do you know what I mean? That's like trying to follow up Queen at Live Aid. Where do you start?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, and I think whenever we're sort of on the main saga, the main plot, you do get bogged down with character, and you do get bogged down with the story. As a standalone movie, they were very fortunate. They could just go in Great Escape style, plan a heist and carry it off, and the film worked really well for that.
Gareth Edwards had a great job there, really, didn't he? Because he had such a big playground he could play in and sort of just throw his ideas in and just mash it up and put it out. And I think taking that risk with Rogue One, it worked, it paid off, and I think we could all appreciate it. I do feel a little bit sorry for Rian Johnson that he's got a much more kind of restricted area, and also that now he's going to be compared to Rogue One if it's not great. If it's as good as, it's better than. I don't think he's got to go up against The Force Awakens. I think Rogue One's the benchmark he's kind of up against.
Yeah, you're always up against the last sort of film, aren't you?
Yeah.
And although I guess these two directors, Gareth Edwards and Rian Johnson, great young directors, and with Rogue One, Lucasfilm were quite happy to give a carte blanche, like they could do whatever they wanted, really, as long as it was okay. Whereas when you're back on the main saga, I think it's a bit more limited.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope we obviously we wish Ryan good with that. We want to see a decent film, so we'll look forward to The Last Jedi. Should we get on to Showcase?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's get creepy and 1950s paranoia B movie, shall we, with The Day the Earth Stood Still. The Day the Earth Stood Still, aka Farewell to the Master and Journey to the World, is a 1951 black and white American science fiction film from 20th Century Fox. Produced by Julian Blaustein, directed by Robert Wise, it stars Michael Rennie, Patricia Neal, Billy Gray, Hugh Marlowe and Sam Jaffe. The screenplay was written by Edmund H. North. It was based on the 1940 science fiction short story Farewell to the Master by Harry Bates. The score was composed by Bernard Herrmann. In The Day the Earth Stood Still, a humanoid alien visitor named Klaatu comes to Earth, accompanied by a powerful 8-foot-tall robot, Gort, to deliver an important message that will affect the entire human race. In 1995, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Plot. When a flying saucer lands in Washington, D.C., the US Army quickly surrounds it. A humanoid, played by Michael Rennie, emerges, announcing that he is coming peace. When he unexpectedly opens a small device, he is shot by a nervous soldier. A tall robot emerges from the saucer and quickly disintegrates the soldier's weapons. The alien orders the robot, Gort, to stop. He explains that the now broken device was a gift for the president, which would have enabled him to study life on the other planets. The alien, Klaatu, is taken to Walter Reed Hospital. After surgery, he uses a salve to quickly heal his wound. Meanwhile, the army is unable to enter the saucer. Gort stands outside, silent and unmoving. Klaatu tells the president's secretary, Mr. Harley, played by Frank Conroy, that he has a message that must be delivered to all of the world's leaders simultaneously. Harley tells him that such a meeting, in the current political climate, is impossible. Klaatu suggests that he be allowed to go among humans to better understand their unreasoning suspicions and attitudes. Harley rejects the proposal, and Klaatu remains under guard. Klaatu escapes and lodges at a boarding house as Mr. Carpenter, the name on the dry cleaner's tag on a suit he borrowed. Among the residents are young widow Helen Benson, played by Patricia Neal, and her son Bobby, played by Billy Gray. The next morning, Klaatu listens to the boarders speculate about why the alien is here. While Helen and her boyfriend Tom Stevens, played by Hugh Marlowe, go out, Klaatu babysits Bobby. The boy takes Klaatu on a tour of the city, including a visit to his father's grave in Arlington National Cemetery. Klaatu learns that most of those buried there were killed in wars. The two visit the Lincoln Memorial, then their heavily guarded spaceship. Klaatu asks Bobby who is the greatest living person. Bobby suggests Professor Barnard, played by Sam Jaffe, who lives in the capital. Bobby takes Klaatu to Barnard's home, but the professor is absent. Klaatu adds an equation to a problem on Barnard's blackboard and leaves his contact information with a suspicious housekeeper. That evening, a government agent takes Klaatu to Barnhard. Klaatu explains that the people of other planets have concerns now that humanity has developed rockets and a rudimentary form of atomic power. Klaatu declares that if his message is ignored, Earth will be eliminated. Barnhard agrees to gather scientists from around the world at the saucer. He then suggests that Klaatu give a harmless demonstration of his power. Klaatu returns to his spaceship that night, unaware that Bobby has followed him. Bobby sees Gort knock out 2 sentries and Klaatu enter the saucer. Bobby tells Helen and Tom what he saw, but they do not believe him until Tom takes a diamond he found in Klaatu's room to a jeweller and learns it is unlike any other on Earth. Klaatu finds Helen at her workplace and they take an empty service elevator which stops precisely at noon. Klaatu reveals his true identity, then asks for her help. He has neutralised all electricity everywhere except for such things as hospitals and aircraft in flight. Exactly 30 minutes later, the blackout ends. After Tom informs the authorities of his suspicions, Helen breaks up with him. She and Klaatu go to Barnhard's home. En route, he tells her that should anything happen to him, she must say to Gort, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
If anything should happen to me, you must go to Gort. You must say these words, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Please repeat that.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
The taxi is spotted and hemmed in. Klaatu makes a break for it and is shot dead. Helen quickly heads to the saucer. Gort disintegrates both sentries and advances on her when Helen utters Klaatu's words.
Gort, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
The robot carries her into the spaceship, then leaves to retrieve Klaatu's body. Gort brings Klaatu back to life, but he explains to Helen that his revival is only temporary. The power of life and death is reserved for the Almighty Spirit. Klaatu emerges from the saucer and addresses Barnhard's assembled scientists, informing them that he represents an interplanetary organisation that created a police force of invincible robots like Gort to patrol the planets in spaceships like this one, and preserve the peace by automatically annihilating aggressors. In matters of aggression, we have given them absolute power over us. This power cannot be revoked. Klaatu concludes with, "It is no concern of ours how you run your own planet, but if you threaten to extend your violence, this Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder. Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration." Klaatu and Gort re-enter the spaceship and depart. You've just had my read-through. The Day the Earth Stood Still. I mean, there's so much we could talk about this, Mark. Where should we start?
Well, let's start in 1951.
The world as it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, you know, back then, sci-fi was quite rare. I think you probably comic books, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we got a director who we're familiar with, Robert Wise, who directed the Andromeda Strain, which we covered. Mm-hmm. And he's gone and brought something that's very, very good to the screen. And people are sort of, I don't know how the reaction was at the initial time, but today it stood the test of time, and it's one of the great science fiction movies.
It's hard to compare because we have to look at it in the greater sort of sci-fi genre, which kind of runs from that time right through to modern days. But then I think we also, in order to compare it and assess it fairly, we have to compare it against the time it was made in.
Yeah.
Because there's no point taking Gort's neoprene suit and comparing it to modern CGI, because it's not going to look that good compared to the technology we have today for effects. For the time, I think the look of it is good, and I do think it has a genuinely eerie feeling to Gort.
Gort is the eerie part, isn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at Klaatu, he's humanoid. He's very intelligent. He's got good morals, and he's come here with a message, really. But yeah, Gort is the one, that sort of gets you on edge when he appears.
Well, Klaatu's quite a likeable character, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, yeah.
You know, I don't get the feeling that he's emotionless or stone-faced like some sort of robot that, you know, he's the same as everyone. He likes to enjoy life to a degree. Gore, despite the fact that these special effects are a little bit wobbly, I do feel like I said there's genuine tension around him. I think the simple motion of him standing still and upright, looking like he was made from a set square, and his visor opening, perhaps a bit of a forerunner to the old Cylon eye there.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Maximilian in the black hole.
That's a good one. I forgot that.
Yeah, these kind of sort of servant robots, you know, there to do the bidding of the master. But yeah, certainly he was there for effect, wasn't he? And he could do a lot of damage as well.
Well, servant robot, I mean, Klaatu says at the end there, they've given autonomy and authority over to them in matters of dealing with aggression. So the robots themselves have a degree of clout.
Yeah, and obviously he knows what to do in an emergency as well.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that as a servant robot. The story that it was based on, which I believe is a 1940s short story called Farewell to the Master.
That's right, yeah.
Kind of a sort of short serialised Reader's Digest type publication of the time. It was probably released in a magazine or a compilation digest book or something like that in the 40s. The story is very similar, but the twist is that Klaatu, or the organic being that comes with the robot, is, and it's the twist sort of Twilight Zone right at the end of the story, is the robot turns around and says to the human, no, you don't understand, I'm the master.
Oh, right.
So the artificial intelligence is they've kind of changed the roles around.
And I can just see that part, Dave, and the stare to the camera, and then the theremin comes in like... Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know whether to put your interpretation of a theremin in there or the sound effect that I've got, but anyway.
Yeah, it was written by Harry Bates, wasn't it? The Farewell to the Master, and 20th Century Fox paid just $500 for the rights.
I believe he did work as some sort of uncredited advisor on the film as well.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a little bit Orson Welles, a little bit people at sort of the old RKO type radio microphones telling people in the world about what's going on, trilby hats and all the rest of it. I guess that's the time, isn't it? It's that sort of familiar palette we're used to looking at from movies like the original King Kong and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was filmed at RKO Encino Ranch, as well as the Washington Monument and the Ellipse shopping mall in Washington. So I was surprised that they actually filmed on location in Washington. I thought it was a studio set. So.
Yeah, I mean, I know they had some problems with the US military being prepared to contribute towards the movie. Obviously, we've got the scene where the saucer is surrounding close to the beginning. And those soldiers, I believe, came from the 3rd Armoured Cavalry Division, which was stationed nearby the film set, that basically came down as extras, I believe, in the spare time. But so it is the actual US Army that features in that scene, but not in a sanctioned sense.
Yeah, and the National Guard were there as well, I think. So
I don't know about the National Guard. The bit where Klaatu first comes from the saucer, and he's wearing his sort of 1980s Rusty Lee TV AM jumpsuit thing.
Yeah.
With his colander goldfish bowl with his eye cut out on his head.
Yeah.
Michael Rene, isn't it, that plays Klaatu in the original? Right. He's a English actor from the period. I believe there was a couple of other more prominent actors were originally considered for the role of Klaatu.
Yeah, because he was it was his first American film role. And he was cast as he was not known to American audiences, which would make him appear more alien.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if he took the helmet off and that was, I don't know, Jimmy Stewart or something, it would be a bit too much of a familiar palette.
Yeah, I think so. Or David Niven or Cary Grant or someone like that.
Yeah. I think in the bit where he's actually walking down the saucer before he's got the soup bowl off his head and he's reaching into his jumpsuit to get the communication device, the whisk thing out. He looks quite lanky and a bit otherworldly in his gaunt and his gait and the way he walks anyway, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. And he had a good accent in this, didn't he? Because he was from Bradford, born in Bradford in 1909. But you couldn't really place his accent. He just sounds quite formal and kind of like newsreader, like a lot of actors then, I guess, spoke like.
Yeah, I guess that would make him, 41 during the filming of this?
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine he's long since passed away. I mean, this is 60 odd years ago, isn't it?
Yeah, he has, and most of the cast obviously aren't with us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He was in The Lost World, which was another one with stop motion dinosaurs, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Lost in Space. You know, he was in a lot of sort of that earlier sort of sci-fi 50s, 60s stuff, which was, I guess, the golden age of sci-fi, wasn't it?
I guess so. I mean, it's that sort of we can do it, so we will do it kind of thing, and then we got some great stuff coming out. I mean, some of the special effects obviously were a bit ropey, but then there's no point comparing them to modern special effects. I think we kind of agree and have to look at that in the context of the time it was made. 1951. Is this a radical concept for the year?
Well, politically, we're like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, This Island Earth, it came from outer space. You know, it was part of the McCarthy, communism, things like that, wasn't it?
The witch hunts.
Yeah, so it was founded in fact and political debate, but by putting that onto another race from out of space, it sort of made people look at their own fears and their own thoughts on sort of, religion, communism, immigration, things like that.
I think it does that. I think it challenges the perceptions of the time. At the end of the film, when he's addressing the scientists around the saucer, they've got all the seats around the saucer and they've assembled those scientists. And you look at the faces of the scientists, there's a lot of different sort of racial variation and an ethnicity in the scientists. And this would have been in a time in America when there was still a lot of racial partition and, let's face it, racist practice. At a time when people of colour would have been expected to give up seats on buses or had separate bathrooms they were expected to use, even separate schools. I mean, frankly, awful. This kind of gives credit and says, look, it does represent everyone. It's saying that these people are valid. I mean, these are scientists, great thinkers. I think it's quite progressive for its time.
Yeah, and that was certainly something that Klaatu says in the film. I want someone representative from each of these areas, each of these religions, races, sciences. So, he wanted to make sure that everybody was there. And you're absolutely right, Dave. I mean, this was the beginning of the boom time in the United States, wasn't it? When things were flourishing, and you think of the 1950s when we look back to the Future, the diners, the drive-through cinemas, particularly for affluent white people. These were the great days, really, weren't they?
Well, for the sort of white affluent middle classes and upwards, I mean, they even invented teenagers when they could afford to go to the diner for a milkshake or own a motorcycle or own a car, the drive-in movie. I mean, this is the package of the time, and I think it's good that it does try to deliver quite a progressive message through a medium as flexible as science fiction, which is a great vessel to put that across. I mean, you can draw metaphors. There's a ton of metaphors in this film. Did you come across the one between this and Christianity?
Well, I guess the Jesus parallels include Klaatu's resurrection and his choice of name, Mr. Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right. I mean, we could almost regard this as biblical Easter eggs, ridiculous as that may seem. In a 1995 interview, producer Julian Blastane explained that Joseph Breen, the film censor installed by the Motion Picture Association of America at the 20th Century Fox Studios, balked at the portrayal of Klaatu's resurrection and limitless power. At the behest of the MPAA, or the Motion Picture Association of America, a line was inserted into the film when Helen asks Klaatu whether Gort has unlimited power over life and death. Klaatu explains that Gort has only revived him temporarily and that power is reserved to the Almighty Spirit. So you could say there's a greater deity involved in this?
Yeah.
In their thinking, whether that's religion or whether that to him that's an actual being.
Yeah.
Of the elements that he added to Klaatu's character, screenwriter Edmund North said it was my private little joke. I never discussed this angle with Blaustein or Wise because I didn't want it expressed. I had originally hoped that the Christ comparison would be subliminal.
Well, there is without patronising an American audience, we do find that sometimes these things are just best left to the audience to decide. So by adding that line about the greater being or greater spirit,
Almighty Spirit.
Yeah, it just kind of makes you feel, well, I kind of wanted to think that out for myself rather than hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a side element of this film, but certainly we've looked at films like RoboCop, for instance, where it is a case of resurrection, isn't it? It is a case of bringing someone back a second time. I don't know, Dave.
Do you think in a film that has quite a progressive and liberal message almost, that it's trying to also appear to perhaps a more of a conservative audience in these references?
Yeah, certainly, and it does sort of humanise an otherworldly body, doesn't it? By saying, I have a similar belief to you, kind of thing.
That the question even came up in interview is proof enough that such comparisons did not remain subliminal, but they are subtle enough that it is not immediately obvious to all viewers that those elements were intended to compare Klaatu to Christ. When Klaatu escapes from the hospital, he steals the clothing of Major Carpenter. As you've said, Mark, carpentry being the profession Jesus learned from his father, Joseph. He presents himself as John Carpenter. Well, I can't help thinking of The Thing and the Fog. He's a horror writer. The same initials as Jesus Christ. And that's tenuous.
Yeah.
JC are quite common initials, are they not?
Yeah, I've got a friend called James Crouchman. I'm sure he'll listen to this show.
But you don't compare him to Jesus. And borrowing a given name from one of his disciples, John. John, again, is tenuous. It's my middle name. His previous actions are misunderstood, and he's eventually killed by a military authority. I guess they're comparing that to the Romans.
Yeah.
At the end of the film, Klaatu, having risen from the dead, ascends into the night sky. Other parallels include his coming to Earth with a message for all mankind, his befriending of a child, possessing wisdom and specialised scientific knowledge beyond any human being, people being given a sign of his power. At the very start of the film, one of the radar technicians, upon observing the speed of Klaatu's spaceship, is heard to exclaim, "Holy Christmas." It's a bit tenuous, but I can see where people would draw those parallels.
Yeah, I mean, Robert Wise, as we said, was kind of, he wasn't aware of it, I don't think, but he was attracted to the project because of its over anti-military stance, and also because he believed in UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is kind of, when he went through the script and started filming, then the parallels were quite obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like we've had a bit of a cocktail of creative input to going into The Day the Earth Stood Still. Maybe it's a credit to its cast and its direction, and I think it still works quite well. They could probably have gotten away with quite a lot in it, I think, in a way.
Yeah, it's a film that's widely shown. I don't know where you last saw it, Dave, but it's been on Film 4 quite a lot recently, sort of like a 3 p.m. showing, something like that, as well as the Andromeda strain. And I mean, if we go back to Robert Wise, we've mentioned this before, but his credits include Curse of the Cat People, The Body Snatcher, Mystery in Mexico, Blood on the Moon, Run Silent, Run Deep, which was that classic submarine film, West Side Story, which, you know, I can't believe the same guy directed this. He directed the musical, also The Sound of Music, which is incredibly popular, and Star Trek The Motion Picture. So, you know, his CV was incredible. What else? I mean, Helen Benson, I think she's quite good in it.
Patricia Neal, the character of Patricia,
Breakfast at Tiffany's, Murder, She Wrote, Heidi. She didn't really have a prolific career, but Breakfast at Tiffany's obviously successful. Tom Stevens, he's quite good. He's sort of seduced by diamonds quite easily, isn't he?
Yeah.
Played by Hugh Marlowe. He was in Meet Me in St. Louis, All About Eve, and Return to Sci-Fi, Earth versus the Flying Saucers. So, but one of the most interesting of the actors is Sam Jaffe.
Who plays Professor Bernhard.
Yeah, and I mean, he was born in 1891. And that kind of hits home, doesn't it? He was in that great film Lost Horizon, where they're looking for Shangri-La up in the Himalayas. The classic, the 1950s version of Ben-Hur. And also he played a kind of professor in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century. Is it 20? It was 25th Century, wasn't it? The TV show. It was
the 70s TV show.
Yeah, with Gil Gerard and that.
Twiggy. That one.
It was 25th century. I'm thinking it's 21st century, but that's where we are, isn't it?
I don't know when they forward him out. He was launched in the 1980s, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So they did that on the quiet, because I can't remember anything about it. No. Yeah, I mean, it's a good little cast. He is a bit of a convenient fit-for-all scientist to me, you know?
Yeah.
Very logically minded. He's not scared by the power cut the same as everyone, the global power cut the same as everyone else is, because he's got a good idea of what it is, and his mind is scientific, so it's a rational mind, it's a logical mind. He can interpret that for himself. He's kind of the fit-for-all scientist to me. I mean, his performance is good, and he does a good job. I like the fact that Klaatu basically figures out the equation he needs to solve his problem, and that gives him credibility to make contact with him, that he's worked it out. That's a trope that's been used in a lot of science fiction since,
I was about to say that. Sorry, mate. Yeah, go ahead.
Even in Galactica 1980, when they're trying to convince an Earth scientist to come on board with them, they do it by solving an equation on the guy's IBM computer or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah, and Star Trek 4, you remember Mr.
Oh, Scotty?
he develops some sort of dense plastic that they can use, doesn't he?
Transparent aluminum. That's the ticket, laddie. Yeah, when he's on the computer.
Picks up the mouse. Computer.
Brilliant. But it is something that's been it's been reproduced in science fiction since. There's a ton of nods in this movie to other movies, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's been featured in a lot of movies. Have you got a list of some of them?
Well, what I've got is a little bit on its legacy. And it says the day the Earth stood still received recognition from the American Film Institute and was selected for preservation in the United States Library of Congress National Film Registry in 2001. It ranks at number 82 on 100 Years, 100 Thrills, a list of America's most heart-pounding films. It placed number 67 of a similar list, 100 Years, 100 Cheers, a list of America's most inspiring films. In June 2008, the American Film Institute revealed its top 10, the best 10 films in 10 classic American film genres, after polling more than 1,500 people from the creative community. The Day the Earth Stood Still was acknowledged as the 5th best film in the science fiction genre. The film was also on the ballot for AFI's other lists, including 100 Years, 100 Movies, the 10th anniversary list, 100 Years, 100 Heroes and Villains for Klaatu in the Heroes category, 100 Years, 100 Movie Quotes for the famous line, Gort, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto, and AFI's 100 Years of Film Scores. In 2004, the film was selected by the New York Times as one of the best 1,000 movies ever made. So this is kind of how the film's thought of. Now, there's some great Easter eggs. Lou Cannon and Colin Powell, do you know who I'm talking about here?
Yeah, military leaders, right?
They also went on to be prominent Republican politicians or civil servants for one of the George Bushes. Believed the film inspired Ronald Reagan to discuss uniting against an alien invasion when meeting Mikhail Gorbachev in 1985. 2 years later, 1987, Reagan told the United Nations, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." So I love the fact that it's influenced a world leader, a president, which is ultimately was the point of the film in 1951. Now, it's lost on Ronald Reagan, because what's Klaatu's message?
Of world peace?
What Klaatu is saying, right, is basically your technology has advanced to a point that you now have rudimentary rocketry and atomic power. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And we know the potential destruction of both of them combined together in the form of the intercontinental ballistic missile. Now, what Klaatu is saying is you can give up your violence, your aggressive, your stance, your wars, your differences between nations, pursue a more peaceful path, and you can come on board with us. Or you can carry on being aggressive and idiots, but keep it confined to your own planet and we won't bother you. But what Klaatu's basically saying is if you export that into space with your newfound rocket technology, we're going to deal with you and sort you out because we won't accept the aggression. Yeah?
Is that why they sent Keanu Reeves?
Possibly. Whoa. I think that's basically the short and tall of the message that Klaatu's trying to deliver to all the leaders of Earth, yeah? It's I don't know, it's an ultimatum, but it's certainly a warning. Look, carry on the way you are, and this is what's going to happen. Of course, this gets delivered. Ronald Reagan watches this, and his interpretation, if we were facing an alien threat from outside the world, he's already thinking of having a scrap with them.
So, and didn't he sort of go ahead with a Star Wars missile defense system or something like that?
Yeah, wasn't it a conceived project for a number of orbital platforms or something that they believe could knock out Soviet ICBMs as they came through before they re-entered? Something like that.
That's right. I mean, Ronald Reagan, bless him, a former actor himself, must have believed a few film scripts because I remember that classic story when Steven Spielberg showed him Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and old Ronnie at the end said, "You have no idea how close you've come with this film."
Yeah, but I'd say that just to be a bit mischievous, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would if I was the president.
Just to get everyone alive and trigger a million conspiracy theories and stuff, I'd say something like that. I just think it's ironic that Klaatu's message is, look, stop being so aggressive, and Ronald Reagan's interpretation of it is it's an alien threat. It's almost like he's completely misread what Klaatu said.
Obviously, I guess Klaatu is taking the sort of the higher ground here, isn't he? Saying, look, we've got better technology than you. If you don't sort yourself out, we'll come back down and, have a word. So I guess that you agree to it, and then you go away with your generals and talk about how we can kill him next time he turns up.
Well, they nearly succeeded. This is the whole point. I mean, Klaatu's saying, look, mucking about and all the rest of it. Fine, I ain't got a problem with you enjoying your life, but don't come over here and poke a finger in my eye or I'm going to sort you out. Basically, that's what they're saying in the diplomatic terms. But I'm kind of with Klaatu in a way. I think we need to hit the reset button on some days.
Yeah, I agree with Klaatu. He's got some good ideas and morals, but as we've discussed, there will always be people out there who want to have a stockpile of weapons regardless. So
it makes the human race look like children, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Talking to children, what about Billy Gray, who plays Bobby Benson?
Yeah.
Was he annoying for you, or did you like this one?
No, I think he fits. He's a typical kid from this time in cinema, isn't he?
Yeah. Definitely, it could be any actor playing him at that age.
I don't think he plays a bad kid. I think he's a likeable kid, and I think he's a good vessel for showing Klaatu things around Washington that perhaps an adult wouldn't show him. I mean, he takes him to his father's grave in Arlington, doesn't he?
That's right, and I think for Klaatu to have a child as a tour guide, sort of the innocence of youth.
Exactly, there's no prejudice or bias in what he says.
No, that's right. It probably makes him realise that, okay, there might be some hope for this race if we can inspire younger people.
Yeah, so perhaps we need to thank Bobby for not getting us nuked by these aliens or whatever, or Gort going around zapping everybody.
Golly, mister, you just blown up the White House.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about Billy Gray, he already had over 50 credits to his name before this film.
What? How old was he in this?
I think he was about 11 or 12, but yeah, 50 credits already to his name. So he didn't really go on to much more. He was in The Adventures of Superman, Annie Oakley, and a TV series called Father Knows Best, which I guess is pretty well known in America. Probably one of those I Love Lucy shows that was very popular.
Yeah, sort of the old safe sitcoms of the time.
Yeah, and what was the old biddy's name? Mrs. Barley.
Don't know.
I didn't understand their living arrangement in the house where like Helen and Bobby live. Did you? I didn't really get it. Were they renting a room or renting a flat?
I guess it's open to interpretation. Like I said, I never really watched it, so I can't really comment on that. I mean, this is 1951, 6 years after the dropping of the atomic bomb and the closure of the Second World War. The suspicions of the Cold War as various world powers developed nuclear weapons. I think this film fits its time very well. And I think it references its time very well as well. It captures its time. And maybe, like you say, there is a degree of national paranoia and not knowing what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it captures that as well as Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I think both of those films are very significant at that time.
Yeah.
Gord, interestingly, he was played by Lock Martin.
7 foot 7 inches.
Yeah, and he died in 1959.
Oh, he didn't have long to go after this was done then.
No, that's right. He was in Anchors Away, $1 Million Mermaid, and The Snow Creature, where he played a Yeti.
All right.
Sort of that typecast. But Lock Martin, as you said, who played Gort, was 7'7". He also had a twin who died in childbirth.
Oh, right. Well, identical?
Yeah.
Blimey.
Lock Martin, this is another interesting fact, was the doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theatre in Los Angeles. You know that famous Chinese theatre? Mm-hmm. He was cast after the sort of regular producers saw him working as a doorman. And even though he was extremely tall, he was too weak to pick up Patricia Neal. And also when he was carrying Michael Rennie as well. So if you look carefully, you can see wires helping him to carry these people. And
Patricia Neal doesn't look a large lady. I mean, I imagine you and me could probably pick her up and carry her quite easily.
Yeah.
I do, but I mean, my notes are a bit disorganised, but I do believe he did have quite a poor physical constitution, Lock Martin, despite his height.
Yeah.
That maybe, perhaps he didn't have a lot of mass. He was probably quite lanky and long in his build.
Well, even at the end where Klaatu's giving his speech, if you look in the background, you can see his arms are shaking. Apparently because the suit was so heavy, it was difficult to wear for a long period of time.
Well, it was neoprene as well. I mean, it was designed to look kind of seamless, wasn't it?
Yeah. With
clean edges and without creases and stuff like that. So I imagine it was quite rigid and probably quite difficult to move in or stand in. It's like the bit where he advances on Patricia Neal and she says the words to sort of shut him down, as it were, and he's kind of sort of stumbling through the chairs that have been set up for the scientists, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does look a bit like a drunk stumbling through a similar scene. It does look a little bit clumsy. It doesn't look like some sort of relentless creature storming its way through and, these things are just flying off to the side out of his way. It does look a bit awkward. And we're supposed to believe that Gort's capable of destroying the planet if we want to. But I still like Gort.
Yeah, I like him.
I like the way that, after Klaatu's been shot, they look up and he's just stood there. And it really kind of comes out of left field. It takes you by surprise and they back off. They're all a bit nervous. The same when he takes Patricia Neal into the spaceship and she sort of sat on a bench in the back of the set and you can see kind of her over Gort's shoulder.
Yeah, that's the shot that we got on our Twitter page.
Yeah, that feels genuinely eerie.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, for quite a simple and, certainly not a modern special effect and costume, I think Gort works quite well.
Yeah, the thing I like about it is he's been standing outside there in Washington and the soldiers have kind of let their guard down because he's been inactive for so long.
Yeah.
And I like that fact because that's very human, I think, isn't it? When you kind of, it's not going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. It's kind of like laziness that creeps in.
I believe those 2 sentries are the only people that Gort actually kills.
Yeah.
Because in the opening scene, he actually destroys the weapons as opposed to killing the soldiers, right. Doesn't he?
Yeah.
Which kind of says something about moral intention. I mean, they don't want to wipe the Earth out. They just want to remove our warring ways as such. Yeah.
Klaatu Barada Nikto. Words used in Sam Raimi's 1992 Army of Darkness film.
I've got a whole page on that.
Have you?
Yeah.
I bet you got the George Lucas one.
Since the release of the film, the phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto has appeared repeatedly in fiction and popular culture. The Robot Hall of Fame described it as one of the most famous commands in science fiction, while Frederick S. Clarke of Cine Fantastic called it the most famous phrase ever spoken by an extraterrestrial. I would say it's up there, isn't it?
It's up there with Home from E.T. or something.
I was going to say Phone Home.
Yeah, so I think that's quite, as an extraterrestrial, I guess that's what put it in our head.
Yeah. Patricia Neal had a problem saying the phrase, though she was proud of the film overall. I do think it's the best science fiction film ever made, although I admit that I sometimes had a difficult time keeping a straight face. Michael Rene would patiently watch me bite my lips to avoid giggling and ask with true British reserve, is that the way you intend to play it? Edmund H. North, who wrote The Day the Earth Stood Still, also created the alien language used in the film, including the iconic phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto. The official spelling of the phrase comes directly from the script and provides insight to its proper pronunciation. No translation was given in the film. Philosophy professor A.N.G. Scoble speculates the famous phrase is a safe word that is part of a fail-safe feature used during diplomatic missions such as the one Klaatu and Gort made to Earth. With the use of the safe word, Gort's deadly force can be deactivated in the event that the robot is mistakenly triggered into a defensive posture.
It sounds more like 50 Shades of Grey. They've got some kind of safe word.
Yeah, you're getting into all sort of areas there. Scoble observes that the theme has evolved into a staple of science fiction that the machines charged with protecting us from ourselves will misuse or abuse their power. So a bit like we speculate so much about Star Wars and stuff, there's been an entire culture, especially since the birth of the internet, of people that have talked about the phrase and what the phrase directly means. And I think there's a lot of interpretations. Fantastic Films magazine explored the meaning of Klaatu Barada Nikto in a 1978 article titled The Language of Klaatu. The article, written by Torna Lee Marb, who is listed as their alien linguistics editor. So he's a bit like C-3PO, I guess. He's got 6 million forms of communication.
That's a hell of a job, though, isn't it? Do you have to do a degree to get that,
If somebody works this stuff out, you can buy Shakespeare in Klingon. Did you know that?
I did know that, and I know that there's a degree in The Simpsons at Manchester University. But, to alien languages. Right,
yeah. God. Anyway, he attempts to translate all the alien words Klaatu uses throughout the film. In the article, the literal translation for Klaatu Barada Nikto was stop barbarism, I have, death, bind, and the free translation was I die, repair me, do not retaliate. Now, there was even a documentary on it. The documentary was called Decoding Klaatu Barada Nikto. Science fiction as metaphor examined the phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto with some of the people involved with the day the Earth stood still. Robert Wise, director of the film, related a story he'd had with Edmund North, saying North told him, "Well, it's just something I kind of cooked up. I thought it sounded good." Billy Gray, who played Robert Benson in the film, said that he thought that the message was coming from Klaatu and that Barada Nikto must mean save Earth. Florence Blaustein, widow of the producer Julian Blaustein, said North had to pass a street called Barada every day going to work, and said, "I think that's how it was born." Film historian Stephen J. Rubin recalled an interview he had with North when he asked the question, "What is the direct translation of Klaatu Barada Nikto?" And Edmund North said to me, "There's hope for Earth if the scientists can be reached."
Okay.
So it's open to interpretation, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just looking on a translation to see what it is in Spanish, because perhaps it was a Spanish street in Los Angeles.
Could be a Hispanic region or something like that.
No, but there's no translation on it.
No?
No, it doesn't look like it.
I'm trying to find the legacy notes now, which is to link it to Star Wars, because obviously that's quite an obvious nod.
Yeah, I've got that one down here.
Yeah? Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so George Lucas named two of his alien bounty hunters, Klaatu and Barada Nikto, in homage to the film.
Uh-huh.
Not my favourite bounty hunters, Dave, you know.
Well, I don't know that they were I think they were sort of Jabba's lackeys on his sail skiff.
Yeah.
Nikto and Klaatu and Barada. There might actually have been three separate characters. I'm not 100% sure.
And were they like Prune Face or something like that, or is that a different one?
No,
yeah, go on.
Pruneface was a rebel soldier on the Mon Calamari cruiser.
That's it. Klaatu is the lizard-looking reptilian guy, isn't he? The green one. I've got a picture of him here.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, as you say, on the skiff. And Barada, let's have a look, see if I can get a photo fit.
It's like Crime Watch.
Yeah, that's the guy. All we need now is Nicky Campbell.
Don't have nightmares.
Oh, true. Yeah, so he was in Return of the Jedi as well, getting a picture of him. Yeah, they look very similar, don't they?
Yeah, I think they were basically sail skiff staff or whatever you want to call them. But that it's obviously a direct nod. Do you know any other Easter eggs that the Day the Earth Stood Still's gone on to inspire?
No, I've only got films it was featured in, but go ahead.
Okay, they're not all in the film industry.
All right.
Mozilla Firefox web browser features an Easter egg that involves the phrase when typing in about robots into the address bar, the words Gort, Klaatu, Barada, Nikto appears in the tab display. So I guess they come up as early search results.
Yeah.
So that's a deliberate Easter egg. Other robot-related references on the page include nods to Isaac Asimov's Three Laws of Robotics, the Tears in the Rain soliloquy from the Blade Runner, 2 lines from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a quote from the character Bendar from Futurama, and a tagline from Battlestar Galactica. So it's in there with all these sort of cultural Easter eggs that Mozilla have gone and put into the Firefox web browser.
That's good. That's interesting.
Yep, Sam Raimi used the 3 words in his film Army of Darkness, as you said, as a scene where a wise man tells Ash, played by Bruce Campbell, to say Klaatu Barada Nikto, so he can transport the whatever it is safely.
Necronomicon Ex Mortis.
That's the one. Yeah, I was nearly there. So yeah, it's had a long-term effect. It makes you wonder. Yeah, it's funny, really, because obviously I was familiar with these character names from Return of the Jedi, and I was familiar with The Day the Earth Stood Still, and it wasn't until I started looking into this stuff Friday night I never made the connection, and yet it's so obvious.
Yeah, I know. As you know, this was like the opening of the book, I guess, when it comes to sci-fi film.
Yeah.
So a lot of our directors that we liked growing up, like George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, obviously this was a sort of a big touchstone to their own ideas of future film.
Well, this is more than a nod, isn't it? It's a direct reference almost.
Yeah.
And yet I had failed to see it up until a couple of days ago.
Well, it's a film I grew up with, really. I guess my mum was a big sci-fi fan.
Yeah.
There was I think in the probably mid to late 80s, there was a sci-fi film sort of period on BBC Two about 6 p.m. Sort of time Eggheads would be on or something like that now. And yeah, there was This Island Earth, The Day the Earth Stood Still, it
Forbidden
came from
Planet?
Outer Space. Yeah, Forbidden Planet. And there was a series 6 to 8 films that were about, this sort of era.
Yeah.
That were really good.
Yeah, okay.
What about Klaatu's claims? He claims to have travelled from 250 million miles away,
Right.
which would locate Klaatu's home world somewhere between Mars and Jupiter.
Okay, so that's not even outside our solar system.
No.
That's the asteroid belt.
that's where he lives.
Yeah.
Nice little spot there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess they just had to I think that's just pulling a number out of the air, isn't it?
Yeah, must
I mean, I'm sure Keanu Reeves said it was a matter of light years or something like that.
Keanu Reeves probably just turned up from San Dimas in a telephone box. How he got Gort in there with him is another thing.
Yeah. Why do you think the remake doesn't work?
I haven't seen it, and I refuse to watch it. I'm that kind of film snob that when I love the original so much, it's very difficult for me to watch a reboot or remake it, unless it's on TV and, I happen to turn it over.
The original is a classic, isn't it? Do you feel that's what it's doing, that it's stepping on holy ground to a degree?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, like with King Kong, I love the original King Kong. No matter how much CGI, Andy Serkis, Peter Jackson money you throw at him, you can't turn a 90-minute film, as The Day the Earth Stood Still is a 90-minute film. You can't turn a 90-minute film into a 3-hour, gorilla versus Tyrannosaurus Rex fest. It just doesn't work. One of the best things about these films, they're short and get to the point and leave you thinking afterwards.
Yeah, it's great. Anything else on it?
I'm just about Bernard Herrmann, who was the
the composer?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, he used two theramines to create his creepy score, one pitched higher than the other, making this one of the first films with an electronic score.
Oh no, that's pretty radical and progressive for its time. The theremin, obviously, I don't know if this is one of the first uses of it, but it went on to be a familiar sound in films of this genre, didn't it?
Yeah, and today, I mean, whenever there's a comedy or like The Simpsons or Family Guy, whenever there's a strange or eerie moment, you will hear that that stereotypical sound, won't you?
It's referenced more and more. Perhaps it's, another example of the legacy of the movie. I think it works. I think it feels generally a little bit unbalanced, and I think it generally feels eerie, like it's not just affecting you emotionally. It's something about the sound of the theremin that affects me physically.
Yeah, I mean, was the original Doctor Who score sort of using theremin in it as well?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest with you. I know, like you say, it had a lot of early sort of electronic instruments in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not as advanced as what we would think of today in terms of synthesizers and mixes and all the rest of it, but it wasn't a conventional score for the time, was it?
No, it wasn't. And I mean, linking this to The Simpsons, I've mentioned a couple of times, Bernard Herrmann was the person that inspired Danny Elfman to become a composer. So obviously he done the music to that and a lot of Tim Burton films. So.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. I guess we've got to give it a score.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give it an 8.
Why 8? What's stopping you from going higher?
No, I guess it has dated, and if I'm thinking about showing this to a modern cinema goer, someone quite new, it would be difficult to sit down a 12, 13-year-old and say, look, this is a great film, because it's not going to appeal to everyone because of the age, of the movie. But I think if you could get them to watch it and the morals that come through it, I think they would recognise it would be a good film. So it's just the difficulty of, the age.
Let me subvert that a little bit.
Okay.
What if you took the same kid 10 years later in the mid-20s, perhaps a university student with an interest in sci-fi, an open-minded individual, sat them down and showed the same film?
If they had some interest.
Do you think the appeal would work then?
If they had interest in science fiction or movies, yes. But I have many friends who like the odd film, but if you ask them to sit down and watch this, it's really good, they would tell you no. So
right.
It depends, really. But yeah, it's a classic. And by popping up on lists and 1,000 films to see before you die, things like that, I think if you're a moviegoer, you like your films, eventually you're going to get round to it.
Right. I think I'd have to score it on the context of it. Like yourself, it was a film that was on television a lot when we were growing up. And this is pre the days of DVD and Sky Movies and stuff like that. So you had to basically have all the old reruns and stuff that BBC Two or ITV would throw your way. So to us, it was a sci-fi thing when we were growing up, despite the fact it was already sort of 30, 40 years old at that stage. Fondness of that. I also think you have to set it in the context of the time it was made. 1951, like I said, this is only 6 years after the end of the Second World War, in the booming world that would come in later, but still with the suspicions and memories that science fiction, okay, it wasn't a new thing. I mean, we could go back to H.G. Wells. American GIs in the Second World War would regularly read sort of your zone troopers types comics and stuff in the battlefield. The story it was based on, Farewell to the Master itself, I believe, is in the 1940s it was written. I think you have to judge it in the context of its time. Like you say, it's dated, but I think as a document of its time, it works well. And as a document of science fiction, when it was around this time, the stories of the flying saucer were becoming prevalent as a way of describing UFOs, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And we see the spaceship that comes to Earth fits in that palette. It's a flying saucer with that sort of eerie glow and sound and everything. There's a degree of scientific credibility to the film, other than things like you've mentioned, like the 250 million miles and the more spiritual aspect of it. I like Klaatu's message. Like I said, I think to a degree he's right. I think sometimes the human race could do with pressing the reset button and taking a good look at itself. That's no one in particular. I just, like I said, literally the human race. To take it into the context of its time, I'm going to give it 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
10, there you go.
On pure merit. If it was released today, probably the same as yourself, 8.
Yeah.
The Keanu Reeves remake, 2.
I haven't seen it, so I wouldn't rate it, but I don't really want to see it.
But if I was the equivalent of Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb back in 1951 or what have you, this would have gotten a 10 from me.
Yeah, and currently on IMDb it's 7.8. I know Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's like 82% fresh. You know,
so it's stayed consistently high.
Yeah.
Which
and
has to...
This is one of those films that generations have passed down to generations, like my mum did with me. So
yeah, for a film that's, 60-odd years old, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
There's a relevance to it. Okay, let's get a bit more up to date and a bit more closer to home, shall we?
A bit more down to earth.
A bit more down to earth, although it might be events that are so shocking they still make the earth stand still. This one's from the Ely Standard website, dated 17th of May, 2017, via their correspondent, the great Ben Jolly, who provides us with so much on this podcast without even knowing about it. I think one day we need to give him a mention in dispatches, don't we?
Yeah, or give him a nudge on Twitter.
Yeah. Traveller borrows Cambridgeshire police car to drive donuts display whilst officer's back is turned.
Brilliant.
A video showing a traveller jumping into a police car and speeding off, sounding the horn and doing donuts in the middle of a packed Cambridgeshire field has been watched more than 360,000 times. The footage, which was filmed on a mobile phone, was posted onto YouTube and has clocked up 361,158 views to date. It's 159 now because I watched it last night. It recently resurfaced on Facebook, leading it to be shared on numerous social media pages. The video shows a man getting into the driver's seat while the officer has their back turned. The traveller then starts sounding the horn and doing donuts, while he is cheered on by a laughing crowd. After about a minute, he stops the car and is talked to by the officer, who can be heard saying, "There's a line, and you've crossed it." We can confirm the video was filmed in Cambridgeshire last summer, and the officer involved is a Cambridgeshire officer, said a police spokesman. Words of advice were given to the officer involved in the incident to avoid such occurrences happening again. No arrests or cautions were made. So let's set the scene here. Basically, you've got a field somewhere in a village. It looks like there was some sort of fete or display or a community event on this field, yeah?
Yeah.
Although it's died down, there's not many people about. And there's a police car there. It's a little hatchback. The police officer's out of the police car and talking to 2 or 3 people in the crowd whilst his back's turned to the police car. While this going on, this traveller guy is getting filmed by his mate on his mobile phone, sneaks behind a police officer, actually gets in the police car, drives it off, and then does 7 or 8 quite wide donuts on this field while this police officer just stands there watching him. So he sort of sneaks in. Of course, he's beeping the horn. All his mates are all sort of cheering him on and stuff as he's doing it. He does his donuts, pulls over, and the copper goes over and says a word. I can't believe the guy wasn't even arrested.
He wasn't arrested?
No. No arrests or cautions were made. So it sounds like they've left it to the discretion of the police officer.
That is incredible, isn't it? Because obviously you can get in big trouble, I'm sure, can you, for stealing a police car?
Well, just jumping into a police car, driving off with it and doing donuts in it, I would say so.
Yeah, I know it's not even impersonating a police officer, it's just being an idiot.
let's remember, right, this is getting filmed by his mate on a mobile phone. So unless you confiscate the mobile phone, this thing's going to start going out on social media. Yeah, you've got to assume that, haven't you? It's out there.
Yeah.
So I wonder if perhaps the police officer didn't arrest him because he was a bit embarrassed that whilst his back was turned, someone got in his car and started doing donuts. Obviously, if he arrests him, he's got to fill a form in and they're going to ask questions. Well, how comes the keys were in the ignition? How comes the car was unlocked?
Absolutely. And I guess the thing is with social media, even if you're trying to cover it up, it's going to appear sooner or later on YouTube or something, isn't it?
So we might as well have arrested him anyway, because it's being watched by 361 and the police have spoken about it now. There's a police spokesman commenting on it. Words of advice were given to the officer involved. I'd give him some words of advice. Lock your car.
You can imagine when he got back to the police station when everyone had seen it, donuts on his desk and stuff like that.
I'll tell you what, he was fortunate to keep his job. I think he was a bit jammy, really.
Yeah.
They're not even very good donuts, this old boy drives. They're really wide, and he's hardly got the sort of steering in on his car. I've done a better one in an escort van before, and that was on grass as well, though it wasn't a police van, it was my mate's. But I didn't steal it. So there's that one. I mean, it's amazing. You can't help thinking if this was in another country, the cop would pull a firearm and just shoot him, and he just stands there with his hands on his hips. The old boy gets out, his old mates are still cheering him and clapping him on. He's got a bit of... I mean, I'll put the link to the video on in the metadata anyway, so our listeners can watch it. And the copper just walks over and said, look, there's a line and you've crossed it. And that's about as much as you get to hear. I mean, obviously no arrests or anything were made. I guess the police officer himself was just a bit embarrassed about it. But you can't help thinking if this was, in other parts of the world, the police officer would draw a firearm and stop the car or something, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that would happen, wouldn't it?
Shoot the tyres out or smash the windscreen up or something like that. But here the copper just stands there with his hands on his hips watching him until he stops himself. I've got that one. What you got?
Well, this one's a bit sinister, and it goes back to something we sort of spoke about a year ago.
Right.
Mystery continues to surround the identity of a severed head found in a skip at a waste facility in Cambridgeshire a year ago. So 1 year on, the head of a man was found in a quarry in Mepal near Ely on May the 16th last year by horrified workers and was later confirmed as belonging to a male. Police searched the site in Mill Road in Sharnbrook, Bedfordshire, which was about 50 miles away from the quarry, as they believed this is where the remains may have come from.
Right.
Officers believed that the head could have been lodged in a nearby bridge for more than 10 years before coming loose when the structure was cleaned. Yeah. Detectives from Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire have been working with specialists from the Natural History Museum and an odontologist since the discovery to determine who the man was and when he died. After conducting numerous tests and examinations, specialists believe the man was aged between 30 and 50 at the time of his death, which could have been as long ago as the 1960s, although experts believe it is more likely to have occurred around 10 years ago. A post-mortem examination came back inconclusive and the cause of death remains to be unknown. A quarry worker said at the time of the discovery, my colleague collected the skip where he saw nothing out of the ordinary and put a cover over the top to stop anything falling out during transit. When he got back to our site, he took the cover off and spotted something straight away. He said, what on earth is that? And his first thought was it was a mannequin's head. Cambridgeshire police spokeswoman confirmed this week that there was no major breakthrough in the investigation and the investigation remains ongoing. Detective Inspector Jerry Waite from the MCU said at the time, one possible scenario we are looking at is that it may have been a tragic accident whereby the man was hit by a train along the Bedfordshire line. We believe the head may have been dislodged somewhere along the structure on the bridge to Sharnbrook, and as a part of the recent cleaning process, it was found its way into the skip and deposited at a quarry in Mepal. Yeah, so there we go.
That deepens, doesn't it?
It's even more bizarre than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of them things, it's like Somerton Man or something. The more you find out about it, the more questions it throws up.
Yeah, and if it happened so long ago, nobody ever said anything about it.
Well, they said it could have died as far back as the 1960s. Wouldn't it just be a skull by now?
Yeah.
I don't know. Or has it been in... How has it remained preserved enough that it's still a head?
Well, I guess if it was coated in cement and sort of, left under a bridge or something like that, and eventually that sort of eroded away.
It just gets more bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine I don't know how long a body takes to decompose to the stage of a skull. I guess it depends on the conditions it's in. I could just imagine a skip driver getting out of the back, pulling it up and doing the old Alas Poor Yorick scene with it or something, holding it up in the air.
Yeah, I'm sure some of the people we've work with during the years would have done that.
Yeah, I know people that would do that. I don't think people would do it nowadays because they wouldn't be familiar with the scene. As cause of death, I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Well, he did.
Decapitation.
Well, how did you come to that conclusion?
I don't know. Well, it also bears the question is, where's the rest of him?
Exactly, and it was never reported. So
yeah, I don't know. It's just a case of a missing person that nobody knew about. It does happen, doesn't it? I mean, homeless people die, and it's often a case of the coroner finally gets it sorted out and relatives informed sometimes years after they've died, or if you've got an old person living by themselves, can sometimes, they can pass away at home and they're not discovered for a while. I mean, that does happen, but this sounds like like you say, and the more we find out about it, the more of a mystery it becomes.
Yeah, well, I'll keep everyone informed if anything else comes up.
Yeah, do you think his name was Barney?
Barney?
Barney Rubble. He's in the back of a skip full of aggregates. Yeah, because I don't know. Was this quarry being used to dump old aggregates now? Basically, is that what it's being used for?
Yeah, I guess so. It's probably it's not been filled up with water yet, has it? Like the pits over there.
So they've quarried or mined or whatever you want to call it, all the aggregates, all the sand and gravel out of it that they want to use.
Yeah.
And now it sounds like they're backfilling it with sort of building waste, sort of rubble and old hardcore and slabs and stuff that they no longer want.
Well, there's a lot of money in that. I think if people are clearing land for building a new housing estate or something,
yeah.
I think if you buy a large piece of land with a quarry, then it's quite good money.
The head become dislodged by cleaning on a railway bridge?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, well, what the hell were they cleaning off a railway bridge that needed a skip?
Yeah,
not graffiti, and I don't. The whole thing just, this. I almost wish you hadn't done this because we've just got more questions. We haven't really got answers, have we?
We'll have to get to the bottom of it eventually.
Yeah, what, the skip?
Yeah,
you might find a foot or something in there.
Well, it's 16 yards, I think. So.
Yeah. Yeah, bizarre as anything. We have to
if anyone wants to give us a heads up about it, if they know any more information.
Yeah. Well, somebody clearly, I don't know, like cleaning a bridge and they come across a head. Oh, that's unusual. Just chucked it in a mini skip nearby. I don't know.
You can imagine it being like that scene in Jaws where Richard Dreyfuss is under the sea and sort of poking around in the bottom of a hull of a boat and that head rolls out, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's one of those more sort of bizarre stories. I mean, there's certainly a mystery to it. But, a bridge getting cleaned, a head going into a skip as a result of this. Nobody said anything about it. It's an unusual thing to come across. I don't know. I think somebody in charge needs to question what's going on here. I think heads need to roll, to be honest with you.
Next.
Yeah, okay. Any more?
That's it for local for me.
Yeah, I haven't got anything else local. Other than I need a new pair of sunglasses.
Oh, that is local.
Yeah. Well, I took my daughter out yesterday flying a kite for the first time out the back here.
Yeah, I saw a photo on Facebook or something.
Yeah, it's quite a windy day. She's never done it before. We tried about a week ago, but the wind weren't there, and it just, we were able to get the kite up by running with it, and but ultimately, once you stood still, there wasn't the wind there to keep the kite up in the air.
Right.
So we had quite a good healthy breeze around here yesterday, so we figured, I'll try again. Took her out there, got the kite up and flying all right, but one thing I noticed is the tail on it isn't very long, and it had a tendency to the top to pitch over and then dive back into the ground.
Yeah. And
because it was only like a single line kite, it wasn't like a stunt kite with two lines that you could steer. You couldn't steer it back upright when it did it to pull it out of the dive. So I stood there on the spot, and I was thinking about it, and I thought, what have I got on me that I can address this issue with? And I figured the tail wasn't long enough, the tail wasn't heavy. Well, there was no way I could make the tail longer to add that weight or ballast on the back of the kite to keep it pointing upwards.
Yeah.
So I thought, what have I got on me that's not too heavy, but would be heavy enough to still affect the balance of the kite? And I realised I've got my shades on me.
Oh dear.
So I got my sunglasses, right? And I tied them onto the end of the tail. And we launched the kite again. And that was working very well. We've got the kites up in the sky, flutting around, with the tail behind it, with my shades hanging off the tail. There's a sudden gust of wind. This is while my daughter is flying the kite, and she is only 7. And it goes flying over somebody's back garden and lands in some big bush thing that they've got that's grown up against the fence. Well, I didn't particularly want to go banging on the door at 42 years old and say, "Excuse me, sir, can I have my kite back, please?" So I'm on the other side of this fence, right, and I'm tugging on the line to try and get the kite back. But it's well and truly caught up in this bush thing, yeah? It's not going anywhere. It's all wrapped up in all this lot. So, persistence and aggression and determination. I'm dragging on the line. Eventually I get it to break free. But the tail snaps away. So somebody somewhere is going to wake up and find in the garden like a yellow and blue ribbon kite tail with a pair of sunglasses tied on the end of it. And think, what the hell's going on here? So if you're a listener and want to know the story behind why that's in your back garden, that's my fault. I'm sorry. And can I have my sunglasses back, please?
It could almost be as much of a mystery as the head off the railway bridge.
Well, I didn't want to keep people in the shade. They weren't an expensive pair of sunglasses. I think I brought them in a petrol station a year ago for about £3 or something. You know, they weren't like designer Ray-Bans or something, but all the same, you know.
Well, it's unlike you to make a spectacle of yourself.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I'm going to the silent movie night, the science fiction silent movie night on Thursday evening at Ely Cathedral.
Yeah.
With Stephen Waterhouse, one of our listeners. So I'll record and get some interviews because they're playing a traditional organ with the silent movie. So it might be a good night, and I'll try to get some Hot Wampa stickers out there in the cathedral toilets. So,
well, these are our punters, aren't they? Local
these are our
fans.
punters, local, yeah.
Yeah, you going to wear your T-shirt?
I will do, of course, yeah.
Yeah. Get Stephen's words on it. I mean, he's a regular contributor to the show anyway, so it'd be interesting to see what he makes of it. We're trying to get some tickets for the proms one.
Yeah, that will be good.
Yeah, so I might have a night out, me and the good lady go and see that yet. Not 100% certain on it. She's still trying to source tickets. There's different prices, I guess, on some you're perhaps further away from it, or I don't know. Yeah,
that was a difficult one because I don't. It's outside, I think, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
In the garden of the Bishop's Palace, so I don't know.
Yeah. That sounds like a film title in itself.
In the garden of the Bishop's Palace.
But that's a bit of an eclectic lineup, isn't it? They're going to be playing some sort of Strauss, sort of 2001 stuff, and a variation on some of the David Bowie's more far out stuff, and that looks like a really good night.
Yeah, we're thinking about attending as well, so I'll let you know about that one.
Yeah, let us know if you go. Yeah, so we're looking at that. Otherwise, not much local. I guess the next thing we've got is the Tony Buckingham interview, and to prepare ourselves for that. Have you had many more thoughts on that?
Just generally questioning and some more facts and things that I know about, UFO incidents, and I wanted to put them to him and just get his thoughts, really, and some other writers like Timothy Good that I know about, and just wondered if he knows these people and his thoughts, and as someone that's been doing it for a long time, it's interesting to know, where he looks for good stories and, how he continues to be motivated by it.
Well, it's a fascinating subject. Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking up more questions during the week. Some of them are kind of obvious ones. Some of them are quite complex ones. Like I said, when we interview him, we don't know what he'll be talking about. I've got some good ideas to try and make a bit of a production out of this one. So, once we get the circumstances of what Tony witnessed and that in, we can sort of structure quite a good little special out of it, I think.
Yeah, are we going to use Theramine in the background?
No, because I want to try and keep it more sensible, more documentary. We are talking to the guy about his activities and what he witnessed himself in the 1970s. And it's, it can be a light-hearted conversation by all means, but it certainly won't be one based on ridicule and that. I think Tony's got an interesting story to tell, and I'd like to hear it.
Yep, I think our listeners will as well.
Yeah, so we've got that to look forward to. That's next Saturday we're recording that. God knows when we'll get around to releasing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it otherwise.
Okay.
For a fortnight?
For a fortnight, and then 48.
Yeah. Clatu Barada Nicto, as they say.
Indeed.
Yeah. Don't have nightmares. We'll see you in a fortnight.
See you soon. Bye.